If you've watched any of the first few episodes of the Knife and Fork Show, and you haven't been living in a cave with crappy wireless or internet service, you know that the food industry is staring down the barrel of the biggest regulatory changes since the 1930s, thanks chiefly to the passage and pending implementation of the FDA Food Safety Modernization Act, FSMA. Well, there's one part of the food industry that is bracing for maybe more changes than any other as a result of that law, and that's the produce industry. Welcome to the Knife and Fork Show. I'm Jason Huffman, the editor-in-chief of Food Chemical News. If you're going to talk about regulatory changes confronting the produce industry, there's one guy you want to talk to, my reporters know. His name is Robert Gunther, RG1. That's the nickname I'm giving him anyhow. He's the Senior Vice President for Public Policy at the United Fresh Produce Association, one of the produce industry's largest and most influential trade associations. Robert is in the midst of a crazy schedule, so we're very grateful that he has agreed to appear in our studio today. So Robert, before we dig into FSMA and talk about that, let's sort of set the stage a little bit by talking about United Fresh, who you guys are, who you represent, and some of the basic regulations that are kind of already existing that the produce industry has to deal with.
Well, thank you, Jason, for having me on the show. And United Fresh Produce Association is a long tradition of representing the fresh produce industry in Washington, D.C. We've been around since 1904. We are a vertically integrated produce association, so that means we're from the grower all the way through to the consumer. So we have grower shippers, we have wholesale distributors, we have retail and food service members all across the distribution chain, from farm all the way to consumer is our membership base. So it's a very vertically integrated trade association. We're very happy to be here in Washington, D.C. I've been with United Fresh for 13 years working on many of these issues that you mentioned: food safety, agriculture farm bill, chemical issues, trade issues, all across the spectrum. You can imagine kind of the different diversity of our membership and what are the issues that really impact those members every day, and we're working on those every day.
1904, well, it's good to have an organization actually older than Food Chemical News and not be the oldest guy in the room, right?
Right.
So you represent not just the growers, but the distributors, suppliers, everybody in the chain.
Right.
Okay. I know that 60% of the produce that we consume in the U.S. comes from other countries.
Right.
Do you represent any foreign interests in that group?
Yes, we have members also. We have members in every state in the country except Alaska, actually, and also we have members in 26 different countries. A lot of those members are people who are interested in companies who are interested in importing produce into the United States or North America. But the vast majority of our membership is located here in North America, United States, Canada, and Mexico. So, not only just the domestic issues, but import, as I mentioned, trade issues as well. So that's kind of the way the industry flows, the way the produce flows around this country. We're there representing those interests here in Washington.
Okay. Well, let's talk about some of the regulations and the regulatory agencies the produce industry has to deal with right now. You're primarily regulated by?
Basically by three major regulatory bodies. U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, does a lot of the work on the farm at the grower level. The Environmental Protection Agency is the same way, pesticide issues, things like that. But obviously, and one you mentioned in your opening, the Food Safety Modernization Act, FSMA, is being now implemented by the Food and Drug Administration. And that is where we're spending a lot of our time right now related to food safety. So when you look at the produce industry, and when you consider the produce industry, over 1 billion pieces of fruit and vegetables are consumed every day by consumers. And the impact that has every day with nutrition issues and food safety. The FDA plays an important part in the regulatory aspects of our industry.
What are inspectors looking at? What kind of paperwork issues do produce growers have? What are some of the the more intense regulations that you have to deal with?
Well, right now the industry is really in the process of transition process. This new law that's coming into place, we haven't seen a change in food safety law in this country in almost 70 years. This is a monumental new law, the Food Safety Modernization Act, or FSMA. And right now we're in the process of anticipating these new rules to be coming out and hopefully in the near future. At the same time, we are regulated a lot within the industry. So we're not just sitting around waiting and not adhering to food safety rules like good ag practices, good manufacturing, good handling practices. Our industry is working with their customers, the retail food service side, to make sure that there are inspections being done related to what produce, how safe produce is, and what are the different things they are looking for related to produce in terms of proper hygiene, growing conditions. Are they stored in good cold chain, keep the cold chain going? Things like that are what are important related to inspections.
Okay. All right. So I think I know we're going to go with the answer to this question, but we have had some outbreaks in recent years. Got a lot of press. There was the tomatoes became pepper outbreak.
Right.
There was prior to that a big spinach outbreak with E. coli, things like that. Have those outbreaks resulted in changes, that we're already experiencing or will experience in the near future in terms of regulation?
Definitely so. I think that what you're looking at right now is an industry that's responding to those outbreaks. Already in the last 4 to 5 years, we've seen the leafy green marketing agreement, for instance, out in California, Arizona, has been implemented.
Could you talk a little bit just about that real quick?
Basically, this is a industry-driven marketing agreement where if you sign up for this type of agreement, you adhere to certain food safety practices that are standards that are based on the best science available for growers and processors of leafy greens. It's basically just California and Arizona are the signatories of this agreement, and they are inspected at the grower level all the way up through
Those
the
are two
production.
big producing states,
Exactly,
though.
the biggest in the country. And then you couple that, cantaloupe growers now in California have their own marketing agreement that's adhering to good safety practices. In Florida, for instance, the tomato industry in Florida has passed or worked with their state legislature, passed a state law requiring inspections of Florida tomatoes related to food safety. So the industry is really doing a lot related to not just waiting for the new rules to come out under the Food Safety Modernization Act, but addressing these issues aggressively because we are a unique product. We're grown and it goes directly to the consumer for the most part. We have to have the consumer's confidence that our food and produce is safe and that our produce is the safest it can possibly be for the consumer.
We're almost out of time, but I'll be remiss if I don't get to the topic that we led off with, and that is the produce safety standards within the Food Safety Modernization Act, FSMA. What essentially do you expect to see in those in a nutshell, and when do we expect to see them?
When is the big question?
Right.
It has been the ongoing question now for the last year and a half or so. The law was passed 2 years ago. Under the law, the requirements were to have these rules, or these proposed rules, out within a year of the law being passed, and they have not done that at this point in time. The Food and Drug Administration has not done that. The three big rules we're looking at, there are a number of rules in this law. There's about 13 different rules. There's about 25 different guidance documents required under the new FSMA law. But the three rules we're looking at are the produce rule, the food facility rule, and what we call the import rule. The big three is what we call those.
Okay.
And when you look at our membership, as I talked about before, they cross all spectrums of that. Under the produce rule, we're looking at whether or not it's going to be commodity-specific or risk-based approach related to the produce rule.
Commodity-specific means?
Means, is it going to look at leafy greens, for instance, and say leafy green growers shall do this, this, and this?
And they'll have their own checklist.
Right. Versus a risk-based approach, which will be looking at how water is treated, what kind of growing conditions, environments are produce in, and that could go for the whole spectrum of different produce, across the spectrum of 300 plus different products that are grown here in the U.S. On the food facility rule, you're looking at how facilities will be inspected, what will be the requirements under that, and then the import rule is who's going to be responsible for making sure that product coming into the United States is meeting the new law under the Food Safety Modernization Act.
Okay. Well, I guess we have to end the discussion right here. But let's not stop talking to Robert Gunther, because I'm bringing him back after this break to talk a little bit about another issue that's even more on his mind right now and more on the mind of produce companies, and that's the 2012 Farm Bill. Remember, if you ever have trouble finding our latest Knife and Fork show, just go to www.foodchemicalnews.com.